and I'm going to hand over now to our first speaker, Ian Jones. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for coming along to this talk. So it's a software demonstration talk that I'm doing. There's going to be 4 bits to it. First of all, I'm going to just show you a little task I'd like people to do during the first 5 minutes. I'm also then going to just show 2 or 3 slides introducing comparative judgment and particularly why and when we might use it for assessing maths. Then we'll have a go, we'll have a play with the software, with the Comparative Judgement Moodle plugin. And well, that might be the end of the session. There might be questions. I've then got slides that are kind of my responses to common issues and questions that arise. So the first thing I want to show you is a question. Have I got the right one? Yeah, so hopefully you can see that. Oops, oh, that doesn't help, does it? Yeah, so this is the sort of test question we're dealing with comparative judgment, genuinely open-ended. And this one is about, it comes from calculus, so we've got to explain what a derivative is to someone who hasn't encountered it before. Use diagrams, examples, and writing to include everything you know about derivatives. Write only in the box. So this is something I've given to students before, and I'd like all of you to have a quick go at that. Don't go to town, don't try and show off. In fact, if there's some naive responses that a student might write, that would be helpful. And it's just that you've got something to upload to the assignment activity in Moodle, which will give you access to the task. Now, I'll drop a Word version. Can I drop files on Zoom into the chat? Oh, seems I'm not allowed to. All right, I'll show you instead where it is on the shared site. Yeah, so if I go to, this is the Moodle Comparative Judgement page on the conference website. And where's chat now? Yeah, there's the link. Thanks, Tim. So that'll take you straight there. And then if you, I know 1 or 2 people have done this in advance, thank you. If you go to this Q&A entry, there you can get the either a Word version, you can just type an answer, or a PDF if you want to write on digital ink. You could also just write your answer on any old bit of paper, take a photo, just so you've got a Word doc or a PDF or a JPEG, something to upload when we get to the assignment. Yeah, so if people could just have a go at that. Even if you just end up uploading a blank one, at least something will give you access. But if you can scribble an answer, that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to get people to multitask. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to get my slides up. And oh, sorry, we don't have Zoom at my institution. There we go. And I guess if I go to full screen, yeah. Are you still with me on seeing what I'm seeing there?
Yes.
Yeah, great, thank you. Sorry, I'm just going to let the cat out who's going a bit mad. Off you go. Yeah, so, yeah, I think comparative judgment is something more and more people have heard of nowadays, and it's useful when you want to assess things in maths other than procedural skills. So conceptual understanding, proof comprehension, problem-solving skills. There's someone doing a PhD into beauty in mathematics who's using comparative judgment, not quite an educational application. So these important but wobbly, hard to nail down things. I sometimes think of these sorts of things like conceptual understanding. As soon as you nail down the letter of it, you kind of lose the spirit of it. So that's what we want. These are the sort of things we need to be interested in to use comparative judgment for assessment. If we use interest in the usual thing like testing procedures and factual knowledge and application of procedures, then comparative judgment is probably not the best tool. We'll probably use the other tools that are more commonly talked about at EAMS. Yeah, so I'm not going to go too much into theory, but there's a long history of the law of comparative judgment in psychology. often ascribed to this guy, Louis Thurston, an American psychologist. And the basic idea is we're inconsistent when we make absolute judgments. So, for example, if, I don't know, I had served you all a meal and asked how tasty it is on a scale of 0 to 10, we'd have answers all over the place. But if we had the same meal cooked by 2 chefs, for example, and you both tried each, we'd expect more consistency about which is better. So it's this idea that as human beings, we're consistent when we compare one thing with another. We're all over the place when we try and place something on an absolute scale. And we apply this to educational assessment in order to assess higher order learning, those sorts of things that I talked about earlier. So this is our sort of recipe list for what we need to do to assess conceptual understanding and problem solving and so on, and to do so efficiently and reliably. So we need extended responses to open-ended prompts. You're all, whilst listening, beavering away producing that. So you've seen the sort of open-ended prompts I've been using recently. There's many different ways of doing it as there are people who use comparative judgment. And we really do want these extended responses. Unlike with a lot of e-assessment or traditional mark schemes, with those you're trying to predict in advance all the answers you'll get from students so that when you mark it, you can do so consistently. We're not doing that with comparative judgment. In fact, it works better the more weird and wonderful the variety of responses from the students are. Yes, so no marking scheme, no rubrics, no red pen, nothing like that. Just one high order construct, understanding of derivatives, for example. We tend to call our assessors judges, and the plugin assumes you'll be using it for peer assessment, but as teachers, we can do the judging as well, the assessing. And we need a comparative judgment engine. And until recently, until summer 2020, there was a few around, no more markings, one I'm associated with that's quite well known, but there was nothing that directly integrated with our learning systems in universities. So last year, I was commissioned to make a comparative judgment engine for Moodle, or rather I was commissioned to commission a programmer to do that. So that's what we've got, and we've now got the second version of it. So it's still, it's a work in progress, but it does work. I've been using it. I know Chris has been using it at Edinburgh and a few other people have. So let's have a go. So let's me share my screen and go back to Firefox. By the way, Mac users, I am generally a Safari loyalist, but for this Moodle plugin, just occasionally a piece of work doesn't load into the screen. So I tend to go to Firefox for it. Okay, so let me go back to the comparative judgment site. So if I click this link, this is where our assignment task is in Moodle. Now I've already submitted my answer here. So hopefully a lot of you have had a chance to submit your answer. And because I've done that, I get the do comparison button. So here we are in the, we've got 2 Word ones here. So what I need to do is click on these to see them here. So if I just open that there, you're not going to see that there. Yeah, okay, so I've got someone's answer here. I guess you can't see that. Let me stop share and reshare. When it's PDFs and JPEGs, they just appear in the browser side by side. And I did allow myself to forget that when I allow Word documents, you have to just get them out of the system. So there's someone's answer there. And then I can, actually, I should just share my whole screen, shouldn't I really? Can I do that? Oh yeah, whole screen, that's better. Yeah, okay, so I'm looking there at one person's answer on the right, and then I can have a look at this one on the left here. And once I've had a read of them both, I can decide which is the best. And then I can choose, well, no judgment on who uploaded these, but I'll choose the right. And then it comes round and I get my next pairing. This one, I guess, is a PDF or a JPEG, so it's loaded directly. I do usually tell my students to do it as JPEGs and PDFs for this reason. So I'll pretend I've downloaded that one and had a read, and then I'll have a read of this one, and this time I'll maybe choose the left there, and so on. So I keep choosing left, choosing right, deciding each time which students demonstrated the better understanding of derivative. I can also leave feedback comments down here. I can decide to leave a comment on this one for this student here, or for that student there. Okay, how are we doing for time? So what I'm going to do is just basically shut up for a while now and let you all just have a go. Hopefully you've managed to upload it, upload a submission so that you've got access to the do comparisons. Just have a go and get a feel for it. And then maybe at 9:20, I'll intrude and go through some slides talking about how I've used it at Loughborough for peer assessment, what the arrangements are in practice of getting the students to do this thing, including my use of summative assessment, and any questions. So yeah, hopefully that's okay and people are all right to have a go, and I'll just stay online for questions and whatnot. Oh, great. I can see lots of people have submitted their assignments and are hopefully having a go. It looks like plenty of people have been managing to get in and make some judgments. The comparisons are coming up, so I'll maybe go a bit earlier into the sort of use case. So it's a very simple idea, right? You just got an open-ended question, you just got 2 bits of work, click left, right, and there's kind of as many uses as there are people who come across comparative judgment. One thing I've been using it for is peer assessment, but I also use it for summative assessment as well, and I combine these two. So I'll just go through a few slides I've got here about a use case I've got from Loughborough University. So what did I do for full screen? Yeah. So yeah, this is from Foundation Maths at Loughborough. And yeah, how I use it is over a semester, I'll do 3, maybe 4 formative peer assessment sessions. These are, I think, good activities to do inherently. You get the students talking about concepts or problem solving, whatever your focus is. But then it also trains them towards a summative peer assessment at the end. Because of course, no rubrics, no mark scheme. The question of, how do I get a good mark? What's the mark scheme? You need a different way to address that with the students, and indeed perhaps with the powers that be at your institution who want to know your mark scheme and how you're going to assess this. So these formative peer assessment, you're sort of bootstrapping excuse me, students' knowledge of what makes a good answer to these questions. You're sort of building it up from them. So you can't really go straight into summative peer assessment, at least not in the educational structures we've got. So here's the first task. So my foundation students, the first lecture in the first semester, the first thing they get from me is what is an equation, give examples of how equations can be useful. And of course, foundation students have all sorts of backgrounds. A lot of them won't have faced anything like this in maths before. So I just encourage them to do what you can, say whatever you know, use words, use diagrams, and just have a go. And then they take a photograph of that and they upload it as you did. And then in the normal world, I'll book a lab if I've got a small enough. I normally have 30 to 50 foundation students. So I book a lab for the first judging session. So I'll book a lab. They've all done this in the previous lecture. See someone on the left here has typed their answer, someone else has written it, and they have a go at comparative judgment. So I usually allocate them about 10 judgments each. They usually sit at a computer each, but I encourage them to discuss with the people sat around them how they're making their decisions. What is it about an answer that makes them think this student has a better understanding of equations than another student? And this is usually quite successful as I get the students talking activity tends to work okay, and you'll hear them saying the sorts of things you might hope they say, the sort of things we might say as well. Well, I want an answer that doesn't contain any errors. I like it to have no diagrams on either of these ones. It's good if it has diagrams as well as equations, as well as words. It's good if they give an example, if they explain a principle. 2 examples is better than 1 example. I liked answers that related it to the real world or related it to other areas of maths. So these are the sort of things you can expect the students to come up with. They also come up with non-mathematical things. Well, if it's hard to read, then I'm less likely to choose it. Presentations important. So, comparative judgment, these sort of open-ended responses, we are bringing non-mathematical things in to do with presentation and, well, there are quite strong arguments that is part of mathematics, but we're bringing in soft skills as well, I guess. And if you don't like that, perhaps comparative judgment's not the best thing. Yeah, so I get them to discuss it in groups as they're doing their judging, why one answer is better than another, and then I'll often at the end facilitate a whole class discussion. I might show the script that's come out best out of their judging. Oh yeah, and by the way, everything's anonymized. I think wherever possible with peer assessment, we should anonymize. And the Moodle plugin allows for that. And there's some nice features, like a student, hopefully this is true, I'm very interested if I'm wrong about this. Hopefully none of you saw your own submission when you were doing judging, for example, because before that feature was implemented, every student always chose their own every time. you know, so it's anonymous. I just show them the best. I don't show them the worst, even if it is anonymized. We're not out to humiliate students. Sometimes I do seed 2 or 3 particularly awful answers in just to make sure every student sees something worse than their own submission. So yeah, I repeat that 2 or 3 times. And then finally, at the end, I'll have a summative test, and there's various ways you can do that. How I happen to do it is by the time they get to the summative test, they've done 3 or 4 of these sessions with me. I'll have also provided 3 or 4 additional open-ended questions that they can choose to have a go at in their own time. And then I say to them, on the day of the test, you're going to get 2 of these open-ended questions. So you've already seen them, the questions, but you don't know which 2. So the idea is they come to the test, they have half an hour to do 2 of these questions. They've seen them before, but they don't know which 2 they'll get. And my thinking is that motivates them to produce as good an answer they can for every individual question that's presented, and they've got to kind of, you know, regurgitate what they've put together within the test time. And it works quite nicely because in revision sessions you'll see them doing more judgments by choice. I always allow them to have as many judgments as they want, sitting in groups and writing things down about what they like, about good answers. So they do seem to engage it, and through that, as the semester continues, students become accepting of my answer. You know what's a good answer, so don't ask me for the mark scheme. And they seem to relate to that. They seem to do okay. All right, what I might do is stop there. So questions and issues. I've got these slides of common questions that often come up. But what I'll do is stop there and just allow some time for some questions. And I might refer to the rest of my slides if anybody asks some of the things that normally come up.
Thank you very much, Ian. So just a reminder, if you can, there's a link in the chat there to the page on Moodle to post questions to, and I'll kick off with this one, which is from Ingo Dan. How do you handle incomparable replies? So responses which are perhaps good in different ways, one in terms of structure, one in terms of mathematical language. How do you make that comparison without that ability to mark on compare on language? Yeah.
So there's 2 answers to that. One, if it's peer assessment, that sounds great, some good grist for the mill for the students' discussion. If we're using it for summative assessment, and when it's for summative assessment, the students then have to do some more judgments, and then I throw in a lot of judgments. So I guess another answer is if we're using it for summative purposes, and perhaps we, the experts, are making that judgment call. So there's kind of 2 classic answers to this in comparative judgment. One is that you should have a range of experts doing the judging, perhaps 5 or 6 different people. So if I am positively biased towards use of formal notation, but another maths lecturer is biased towards use of diagrams, you hope that it comes out in the wash by people doing several judgments. Another is that a given judgment doesn't give you much information, so you do need many judgments to make the scores. So, I made that comment earlier about absolute judgment, we're all over the place. Comparative judgment, we're very consistent, but a comparative judgment gives you very little information. So you need lots of these binary judgments in order to produce scores for the students. So the answer is, if it's very close and, it's hard to call because there's different dimensions of goodness, it kind of doesn't matter. Just one judgment doesn't really throw the pot out much. Yeah, Tim's just said it's a football league. It is. Yeah, that's right. So you add up the points.
Question from me, if I may, Ian. As I moved through the comparisons myself, I was an extremely lazy student, I feel, and I was very aware of some of the biases I had as I moved through. So one was handwriting, another was length, and another was format. So, but it was a Word document because I was very lazy. I didn't open it, and but I consciously, as I was moving through very quickly, obviously, I wasn't reading properly. I was just looking, is it neat? How long is it? How detailed is it? Is there any work being done to find out if these are real issues, sort of bias on handwriting, for example? Is that a problem for comparative judgment? Is that something that's been looked into?
So, I mean, just quickly on the Word document, yeah, I don't allow students to upload Word documents. That was just for ease today. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of validity research being done by myself on others on comparative judgment. And yeah, the better the presentation, there is some correlation there with the final outcome. So whether it's handwriting or, you know, there is a more is more, the longer ones, you can do correlations with file length, file size as a rough proxy for amount of work done, assuming they're all the same format type tests. So yeah, these things do come in. But what's reassuring is I've done some fairly rigorous studies where I've issued a battery of tests where, I mean, this is more with children, where we measure handwriting and we measure communication independently, or we use proxies such as GCSE Maths and GCSE English. And whilst these things do affect outcomes, as you would expect, maths in the research we've done overrides them by quite a way. So yeah, it's messy, it's fuzzy, but it seems to be the maths that's there in the studies we've done.
Thanks, Ian. Just one final question. There are a couple more there that some more comments than questions, so I don't know if you have time after Ian to take a look at those, but a good place to finish, I guess, is a question from George Kinnear here. What is the feedback from students about this? Are they happy with the feedback that they get? What do they receive back? Is it a score? Is it a rank? Is it comments? What do they get?
This is a good question. So what they don't get is red ink, and for some people that's a barrier. So yeah, I didn't, to save time, I didn't go into the details, but yeah, all these binary decisions get turned into a score out of 100 for students. Now, I don't report a score out of 100 because it sounds like a percentage and it doesn't mean they've got 70% of the. I turn it into a grade, typically between 0 and 5, because it's typically worth 5% of the module, or between 0 and 10. So yeah, there's background stuff I haven't shown you that's there in the documentation for turning it into a grade. When they're doing their peer assessments and the summative assessments, I encourage students to write comments to each other in the comment box at the bottom. So if we really want that more traditional written one-to-one feedback, I do that. But what I do all the way through the semester is say to them, your feedback is comparing your work to others. So unlike normal tests, you don't get to see other students' responses, but here you do, and that's your feedback, comparing yourself to others and having another go. Sitting in groups, discussing what makes a good answer, that's your feedback. These whole class discussions, that's their feedback. And I do use the word feedback again and again when I'm discussing comparative judgment, so that when the dreaded end of semester student feedback comes, they've heard the word feedback and they know where to assign it to. And I think another, well, yeah, no, I'll finish there. I was going to go on, but we're getting close to the end. So I'll stop there.
That's excellent. Thanks, Ian. That was a fascinating talk. And like I said, there are some conversations, I think, to continue on the Moodle page, but we will